Okay. Hi, I'm Aysha Tapp. Not yet a doctor, but soon. Next time I'm here, I will be. I am actually piggybacking off of what Debbie was just talking about. We collaborated with Debbie when we were setting up our National Conservation Innovation Grant demo trials. And so I am presenting on the lessons learned from that year 1 and 2 of a National Biochar Soil Health Demonstration Trial Program for American Farmland Trust. And for those of you that are not familiar with American Farmland Trust, we are a nonprofit. Our mission is to save the land that sustains us by protecting farmland, promoting sound farming practices, and keeping farmers on the land. And we do this through on-the-ground projects, objective research, and effective advocacy. And so one of the things I'm going to be talking to you about today is that on-the-ground research projects. So I'm going to be talking to you about the project, what its purpose was, why we are putting it together, the research design and implementation, which is what Debbie was helping us with, data collection, what pieces of data were we collecting, why and how, and then what we have learned so far. So AFT is working to catalyze a new conventional agriculture, and what that means is that when we say conventional agriculture, we want it to mean something different than it means right now. We want the vision that people bring up in their minds to be something more sustainable than what it currently is. And we want biochar to be a part of that toolkit of this new conventional agriculture. So as you guys know, biochar is a tool in the soil health toolbox. We've just been hearing about it. It improves soil health, climate adaptation, resilience and mitigation. So we put together a grant where we are working with 34 farms, actually now 35 farms across the US in 8 different states. Where we are providing biochar training, providing biochar on these 35 farms, as well as providing biochar training for resource professionals. And we're also building a bridge between biochar producers, farmers, and ag professionals. And so we want, with this grant and other grants that we're currently working on obtaining, we want to be a bridge, a catalyst, and a convener for the biochar industry. So this is kind of a brief look at what our project looks like. These are the 8 states that we are currently in with biochar. We're in a lot more with other projects. But with this project, we are supporting, demonstrating, and evaluating successful biochar adoption on farms. So a lot of the research that's out there, Kristen talked about all these studies that are being done on biochar. A great majority of them are being done in lab trials, in greenhouse studies. And so we want to increase the number of actual on-farm research that's coming through with biochar. And so each of these projects, each of these on-farm trials is set up the way that Debbie talked about, in a way that we can gain robust data that can be publishable. We provide an innovative combination of financial and technical resources, decision support and assistance, and networks to build capacity and momentum for broader adoption. And what that means is that we are paying our farmers every year of this project. It is a 5-year project. So the farmers are getting paid to help us, and we are also paying for the biochar that goes on their farms. So they get free biochar, they get payments every year. And then they also have technical assistance from AFT staff and our collaborators like Debbie. And we are also building networks. So not only are we have farmer field days on our demonstration trials where they can bring in other farmers to see what they're doing and see how the biochar is working on their farm. And then we're also doing train the trainer events with resource professionals in their area, so the resource professionals can gain the knowledge that they need to be able to provide biochar assistance in those areas. And then we're also analyzing environmental, economic, and social outcomes through these demo trials. So this is a greater look at what we're doing in each of these states. So each of the states is looking at something different. In Washington, we're looking at high disturbance crops. In California, we're looking at soil management, or soil water management. Water is a big issue out in California, and so we're looking at ways that biochar can help mitigate that. Nebraska, we are collaborating with the University of Nebraska and Lincoln to look at nitrogen cycling. They are using, I can't think of the term right now, but it's the nutrient management techniques to precision nutrient management with their biochar to see if it can decrease the amount of nitrogen that they apply. New York is looking at, they're looking at several different things on different types of farms. Or they're looking at biochar type on non-organic farms. So they're looking at wood biochars versus manure biochars. And then on their organic farms, they're looking at timing. So they're applying in the spring and the fall to see if that affects the benefits of biochar. And then they also have a vegetable farm as well. Maine is looking at high disturbance as well, and also they have some PFA trials where they're looking to see if biochar helps with the mitigation of PFAs. And then Massachusetts is small scale vegetables. Illinois is corn and soybeans. In Kentucky, those are my trials, and we're looking at the addition of soil microbes. So do soil microbial inoculants work for like charging the biochar? So the first thing that we did when we were implementing the trials, and this is really where we delve into what Debbie was talking about with the 4 R's. We first chose the farmer, and then we did the initial adoption plan. So in choosing the farmer, some of my animations didn't work right. But so with choosing the farmer, we reached out to some of the farmers that we already had in our network. And then we also, for some of the areas that were new to implementing these demonstration trials, we released this flyer so farmers could apply to us to work with us. And we had a great response, especially in Washington. Washington farmers are really excited to try biochar. And then we did the initial adoption plan. So once the farmers were chosen, this is where we really went into what Debbie was talking about. This is where we chose the overall plan, and the initial adoption plan is like a 5-page document. This is just a little snapshot of that document. So we asked them all about their typical management, what kind of equipment they had, what size their equipment was, what they wanted to get out of using the biochar. And then from that, we developed this plan that you see right here, which is what the control is, what the treatments are. So this is just one that had 1 treatment. Some of them had 4 treatments in all, so control and 3 treatments. And that really depended on how willing the farmer was to do multiple treatments and what they wanted out of the biochar use. We chose the biochar type, and a lot of times we went with what was locally available. So while the master plan is to be able to choose exactly the right biochar for what your intentions are on your farm. When you're going with what's locally available to you, sometimes you just don't have those options. And so a lot of times we just had to go with what we could bring in that wasn't, 4 states away. But we are working to change that, and you'll see that near the end of my presentation. And then once we decided all of that, we worked on the research plan, the research design. And so this is some of our examples of what our research design looked like. All of them had those replicated random block designs that Debbie went over. And all of them had at least 2 treatments, a control and a treatment. So management as usual, and then the treatment was always just, one of the treatments was always biochar by itself. And then some others added other things, and I'll go over that in a minute. And then 3 replicates. So that is the minimum that we did was 6 plots. And so this is an example of one. So this is an example of one that's just control and biochar. This is an example of one that had a control and 3 treatments. And here's another one that had a control and 3 treatments. And so, and we developed these maps for each of our farms. And so the different areas were asking different research questions, like I went over in the other slide. And so this really determined how many blocks or plots we were going to do. With Maine, the PFA's remediation with different types of biochar. Some of those had 4 or 5 treatments. Nebraska has 8 treatments, so they're looking at 4 nitrogen rates with and without biochar. California is looking at biochar and biochar with compost. Kentucky's looking at biochar and different types of microbial inoculum, and so on and so forth. So then we went on to deciding what kind of application we were going to do on each farm. We have applied biochar to 18 out of the 35 farms so far. The other 17 are being applied this fall. And so we looked into what machinery was available to the farmer, just like Debbie said. We want to use what is available. We don't want to add expenses to farmers. And then we also timed the biochar application around their tillage and their fertilizer application. Because as Debbie said, you want to be applying, when you're applying some other sort of nutrient to, because the biochar will bind to those nutrients. And so if you're not, then you can get that yield drag where the biochar is holding on to nutrients that the plant needs. So you want to make sure that you're not doing that. So then we started with the data collection. The first thing that we did was we actually worked with a company called Earth Optics to come out and do carbon mapping for us on each of our farms. So this is an example of what one of those carbon maps looks like. And then we used 2 measures of soil health. We went out and did the NRCS in-field soil health assessment, which gives us just a qualitative assessment of what the farm, what the field looks like. Is the soil more degraded? Does it have, there's like 4 resource concerns that we're checking for over 11 indicators. And but it's just a really like qualitative assessment of what does this farm look like right now. And then we took actual soil samples to send off to the Cornell for the Cornell Comprehensive Assessment for Soil Health, the CASH reports. This is an example of what a CASH report looks like. They fancy it up by putting it normally doesn't have our logo on it, but we fancied it up a little bit. This is one that we actually gave to a farmer. And so what this one does is it has 12 indicators in 3 different groups. So you got your physical, biological, and chemical, and then it gives a score based on the average of those ratings from those indicators. So we sent those out before we did the biochar application, and then we're also taking those soil samples at the end of the project in 2027. We also are taking economic data, so we have annual field operations data sheets, and this is data that is being taken every year. We're going on crop year, so we asked the farmer to tell us everything that they did on their field from right after last year's crop harvest all the way to this year's crop harvest. And then we assess what kind of if there were any economic differences in the biochar versus non-biochar plots. And then we also did social surveys from farmers and field day participants. And so with the farmers, we're taking these twice. So we are also doing one right before they apply biochar and one at the end of the project to see if any of their responses have changed over the course of working with us and having biochar applied on their field. And then we also do field day, we assess field day participants. So every time that we have a farmer field day where we invite farmers and resource professionals out to see our farm, see what we do, learn about biochar, we ask them if their views on biochar use have changed since attending the field day. And then these are some of our lessons learned. So we learned a lot from doing this. This is my first time on applying biochar on large scale to some of these farms. We have learned about project timing. One of our other projects that we did was a cover crop project where we tried to have all the farms implement the project at the same time, and that was really, really hard. And so with this time, we staggered when the project started. So we had some farms applied biochar last fall, some applied this spring, and then most others are applying this fall. That's not intentionally how we wanted it. We wanted most of them to apply this spring, so we wanted to kind of learn what to do from the fall 2024 farms and then use that to implement most of them this spring. However, that didn't work out as well, mainly because of the last bullet point on here, which is the grant insecurities. NRCS was like, we're not sure if we're going to pay you in the spring. So we were like, we're not sure we're going to continue this in the spring. So we had to kind of wait and hold off on purchasing some of the biochar until this fall. So that kind of messed up our plans a little bit. And then finally, the lessons learned is the biochar application. So there's a lot of things that have to be kind of modified in the field as you're working with it. One of the things, and Debbie, this is the question I was going to ask you while you were up here, with application rates. So we spend a lot of time determining what the application rate is going to be, but then once we're out there, the moisture content changes in the biochar. And so how do you adjust for, to make sure that you're still applying at the correct rate when you're unsure of the moisture content? Because that water weighs a lot more than biochar. And so that can greatly affect what your actual rate is that you're applying. The second thing is the machinery. So this middle picture that's on there, this is our colleague Brian Brandt using a stick to churn the biochar in the spreader because it kept getting stuck coming out. And that's a common theme that we saw in our biochar application is that if you were using a spreader that didn't have some sort of an agitator in it, you had to manually agitate the biochar to get it out. So that's one thing that we're kind of working with our biochar producers to see if they have some sort of recommendations around that. And then the supplier type. Or the supplier and the type of biochar that they supply. So most of our biochar suppliers were supplying us with hardwood biochar that varied a lot in the way that it looks. So some of it was very fine with a lot of ash, and some of it was not as fine and high in carbon. And then this picture that's right here, this is almond husks, and it came to us dry, which we did not know at the time that dry biochar can catch on fire. So that was fun. That was dealing with almost setting a farmer's field on fire was not something that we were anticipating. And I have very little time, so I know that I will not have time for questions, but I'm just going to quickly go through these last few slides. So as a bridge, catalyst, and convener past this project, we are working on identifying and addressing gaps within the biochar industry. This is something that my colleague Ellen Yateman will talk about in just a minute. We are continuing to run these soil health demonstration trials. We are constantly expanding the number of farms that are in this trial. There's only 34 farms that NRCS paid for to be in this trial. We were able to add one more through additional funding. We are looking to add more to this trial. And so if that's something that you're interested in talking to us about, we would love to talk to you about it. And then we also would like to provide national decision support through our toolkit, which I'll talk to you in about a minute. But I would like to thank all of our collaborators. These are our collaborators that have worked with us on this project and the toolkit that is in the next slide. We have a toolkit. That QR code is a link to the toolkit. It has education for farmers and service providers, biochar producers, and policymakers, and we are constantly updating this with new information. We want to help the biochar industry by providing this much needed information in one place. And then what we just added to this toolkit, which we are very proud about, it launched like last Friday, is our biochar suppliers map. If you are not on this map, please use that QR code. I think the QR code links to the map. Hold on. Yeah, so, oh yeah, just give me a minute and there'll be another QR code. So the QR code is to the map, and the map will give you, it shows where biochar producers are across the country, and then when you click on the producer that you want, it gives all this information about the producer, what they produce, how to obtain what they have, and so farmers and service providers can go on and find what they need in their area. So it helps with finding local producers. And finally, if you are a biochar producer, and you are not on this map, please use this QR code and fill out the survey and get on our map. We're updating it every like 3 months, but I'm going to have our people update it right after this conference. So thank you so much, and I would love questions, but I went over. So.
Tara might need help.